It's Tuesday the 24th of January. This is the 7th day of the trial now. We're well into the whole thing. Today was Mark Collett's day. He was in the witness box yesterday being cross-examined by his barrister. Today he spent almost the entire day in the witness box being cross-examined by the prosecution. We'd been told before that they probably weren't going to be on this for very long, that the prosecution isn't a particularly aggressive questioner. I suppose perhaps he wasn't aggressive, but he was certainly pressing, and this went on and on and on, I say it was quite an ordeal really for Mark. As he pointed out a number of times, the barrister was cherry picking what he said, naturally enough, picking out the very harshest pieces, which were mainly harsh because they're taken out of context anyway, taking him as far out of context as possible, trying to put words into his mouth or thoughts into his head. It was a very professional legal roughing up, really, that he was getting in the witness box there. And I have to say, Mark came through it incredibly well. He really shone there today. He didn't lose his cool, but he wasn't pushed around. Really, quite early on, he made a mark. Where have we got? Yes, the prosecution were starting to press and press and press on BNP policy on immigration and resettlement, and Mark stopped him and just said, well, is the BNP on trial here, or are British National Party policies on trial here, or are a small number of speeches that I made on trial here? Because I thought it was the speeches, and that rather set the tone for it. Actually, it carried on. There was quite a funny piece a bit later on, which had really everybody laughing, the judge, the jury, prosecution included. Mark was being pressed over and over again about what would have happened had there been Asians, Muslims, asylum seekers, some of the people that he mentioned in his speeches, at one of these meetings, and might they have been offended, might they have been insulted? And Mark simply refused to be drawn on this. He kept on saying, well, there wouldn't have been any there. I was talking to our people about our issues. We don't have asylum seeker members and we don't want them. And this went on and on, with constantly being pressed to give an answer to a purely hypothetical question, which answer probably really would leave him damned if he did or damned if he didn't. And in the end, Mark said, he was asked, supposing there had been Asians or asylum seekers at the meeting, would you have said the same things? Mark in the end replied, look, this is a ridiculous point. It simply wouldn't happen, so I can't answer it. It's like me saying to you, if pigs can fly, would you ride one? Which, as I say, everybody laughed at, and I think at that stage the prosecution barrister, Mr. Jamison QC, realised that he wasn't going to get anywhere with this, so he said, well, we'll move on. He went on with asking Mark about the circumstances in which the meetings could have, wording in a meeting like that could have been insulting, abusive or threatening, and Mark turned the prosecution's words back on him to effectively prove from the question he just asked that there was really no way that in the circumstances of these meetings, which is what the alleged offences are all about and nothing else, there was simply no way that anyone was going to be insulted, abused or threatened, so he hadn't broken the law. He did it very, very well, I felt. What else do we have? I'm just going through the blog. This is actually the trusty computer that I'm using in the court, and the blog for tonight or today has already gone off to go up online, but just to go through it, because there was a lot of material today. Mark was under pressure on a number of occasions, saying, well, why are we only talking about ethnic crimes, why not white crimes? He responded to that primarily with two thrusts. One is, when we're talking about minority ethnic crime when whites are the victims, we're not making a big fuss so much about the crime as about the way in which the mass media and the police and the authorities simply don't seem to be interested. So we're not even criticising ethnic minority criminals particularly. He said when there are terrible things going on, like the grooming, paedophile rapes in Keighley being carried out in that case by Muslim gangs, he said then yes, obviously we condemn those crimes like that are appalling. But he said that overall our main critique of what's going on in this country isn't directed against the ethnic minorities, it's directed against our own liberal establishment, who, when individual or group members of ethnic minorities are doing things which are thoroughly bad, simply won't make any effective response. I think that came across very, very well. Mark had said in one of his speeches that it's contrasted the paedophile drug gang rapes by Muslims in Keighley, which have involved entire gangs of Muslim men, some even in their 40s, we heard earlier on today, but generally in their 20s, grooming or raping or seducing girls of 13, 14, real paedophilia. And Mark, as an example of what paedophilia isn't really, had given the example of a white lad of, say, 22 who goes into a nightclub and there's a girl in there of 14 who's dressed up so she looks like she's 17. And Mark said, you know, what might happen then, it's against the law, but that's no comparison between that and what's been going on in Keighley. And the prosecution barrister said, but why did you use the example of a young white lad being the one who innocently steps over the boundary by ending up with a girl who is just underage? Why didn't you say, this isn't like a young Asian lad going into a nightclub and picking up a girl? Why are you doing this? So he was trying to suggest that Mark was using the Keighley exclusively Muslim paedophile gangs and contrasting that with a hypothetical white lad who's basically innocent of any wrongdoing. And the prosecution hammered home on this. Well, why did you say white lad? Why not Asian lads? And Mark just said very coolly, he said, well look, the pubs and the clubs that I go to aren't frequented by Asians of any sort, so I'm just talking from my own experience. That's all. Don't try and make anything out of this like I've got some kind of hidden agenda. I'm merely talking to people in that area about things which are their experience and my own experience, and that was it. So he moved on from there. It was very, very effective, I felt.